Rand Paul went to Howard University, of course, the preeminent historically black college, to make the case for them voting Republican. And it all boiled down to basically, I forget who did this. Someone tweeted out. She said, "Weed, Dixiecrats, and Lincoln." And that's, of course, Lincoln was a Republican. Democrats in the South pre-segregation implemented segregation, which is totally true. And then, of course, after Johnson signed the Civil Rights Act, they all left and became Republicans. And then where Rand Paul is right, Rand Paul definitely has some good things to say about the drug war. So credit is due. But the other thing is that, first, there's just two things to highlight here. Rand Paul, as we know, is on record opposing the most important and vital aspects of the Civil Rights Act. And secondly, and maybe less importantly, we also know that he's kind of just sort of a know-it-all. So we're going to play some sound of Rand Paul in a minute. But first, I just want to pull out this little nugget. Because when he's at Howard University.
Which is hilarious in itself.
Which is hilarious in and of itself. And he's trying to make the pitch for the Republican Party. So he asked the audience of young, African-American students, scholars, professors, academics.
Let me precede this with
please,
credit where credit is due. I do have to give Rand Paul props for showing up and trying this out.
Rand Paul is a lot like he's a lot like Newt Gingrich in that regard. Newt Gingrich was always game to go anywhere and talk to anybody. So sure, credit. I agree. Look, if the Chamber of Commerce invited me, I'd go. And as I'm sure that you would go and talk to IP trolls if they invited you.
Of course.
Because of course, so yes, absolutely. Go and talk to
I like how IP trolls to me is the equivalent to African Americans to Rand Paul.
I know, that was pretty. I know. It shows you the type of esteem I hold Rand Paul in. So guy opposes the friggin' Civil Rights Act. Anyways, not because he's a racist per se, but because he's a moron. So he asked these room of very educated African Americans. He says, "Did you know that basically Lincoln was a Republican and the first black legislators and the founders of the NAACP, would everyone know that they were all Republicans?" He asked, referring to NAACP founders.
What, do you think he was talking to a room of like 3-year-olds?
So his speech was interrupted by "yes" came the booming response from nearly the entire audience, who appeared offended that Paul would even raise the question.
Just unbelievable, this guy.
Just like, hey, do you know basic history? Howard University students? Yes. All right. Then, as you can imagine, because Rand Paul, when he was running for Senate, basically said that he opposed the Civil Rights Act, or the part of the Civil Rights Act where private businesses would be forced to desegregate. And I think we have sound of him talking to the Wall Street Journal when he was running for Senate. Let's hear what Rand Paul had to say.
I like the Civil Rights Act in the sense that it ended discrimination in all public domains, and I'm all in favor of that. But you had to ask me the but. I don't like the idea of telling private business owners. I abhor racism. I think it's a bad business decision to ever exclude anybody from your restaurant. But at the same time, I do believe in private ownership.
Okay. So that is really clear. That basically means Rand Paul would be okay if the Civil Rights Act only applied to the public sphere, which, bear in mind, he pretty much wants to completely eliminate. So you're pretty much, in his ideal world, basically almost talking about courthouses, if that. Everywhere else?
Interesting that the one place he's cool with African Americans is inside the courts.
Well, to be fair, he's been critical of the drug war. But basically he's saying, that's the reality. Besides public spaces, which he pretty much totally wants to destroy, he doesn't want the Civil Rights Act shouldn't apply to private property. That's what he said. That's the most significant.
I wonder what he considers private property.
Restaurants where civil rights workers went and got beaten and abused.
I'm sure there's a lot of people who have very different meanings of private property. If you get at what right. I do get that. I'm not even going to go there. Yes.
But fair point. So How does Rand Paul respond to this? And there's something about Rand Paul where you think like he's very delusional and he's pretty mendacious. So I was expecting him to soft pedal. I was even expecting him, if he did this speech and trying to maybe make some moves, to maybe even say, well, I've kind of revised my thinking and come up with some, silly way of justifying his position or creating a new position. But he said in response to a question about this, quote, "I've never wavered in my support for civil rights or the Civil Rights Act." So that was his answer. And so what can you say?
I don't think so.
Because just like Rand Paul appears to be living in like some 1940s fantasy, he doesn't seem to realize that the government-funded and invented internet exists and people can Google what he said on tape.
You know what's funny? I was reading. I couldn't watch the stream of it because it was happening live yesterday during the show.
Right.
But I was reading a wrap up of it, and someone did say to him, like, a question. Someone who was asking a question did stand up and say something like, "I have you on tape," saying that. Unfortunately, it didn't continue, so I don't know what his response to that was. But I mean, the guy clearly went there thinking he'd be able to whitewash things, I guess you can say.
I guess when we clip this on YouTube, this might be government-funded internet owns Rand Paul. Because you see lies and distortions all the time, but in today's age, the just straight up, I didn't say that when anybody could access what you said in 20 seconds, usually isn't used anymore. So I don't know what's going on inside Rand Paul's head, but suffice to say, he's an extremist, he's crazy, and he ran on opposing the Civil Rights Act, which is just really think about that. Think about, you went back to the 50s and the 60s. You saw the civil rights movement, and your prime takeaway was, I don't know, I feel like those poor restaurant guys that didn't want to serve ice cream to integrated counters, I feel like they were a little unfairly run over.
Rand Paul did probably make history yesterday, though. Probably the first ever libertarian to step foot in Howard University.
Could be. That's a good point. I didn't think of that. Rand Paul, I'm sure, will make a lot more history, and not in good ways, before his public career is over.